For over a year now, more of us have been working from home than ever before. It's just one of the many status quos the pandemic has shifted for millions of people. But it may have set an important precedent for our future, as many companies are staying fully remote, or at least embracing a hybrid work-from-home policy moving forward. So in the last year, what have we learned from our shift to remote culture? What are the strategies for success, tools for collaboration, and pitfalls to avoid in a work-from-home environment? Well, let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome to Momentum, a podcast by Jotform, where we talk about the technology, productivity tips, best practices, and strategic insights that help us move forward in business and in life. I'm your host, Elliot, and today I'm here once again with Jotform's VP of Marketing and Communications, Chad Reed. Chad, it's great to have you back. I take this to mean that our first episode didn't scare you off, which is hopefully a good sign.
It almost did. I slept on it, but yeah, happy to be back.
Okay, well, we're here, and so we'll get straight to it. I figure today's topic is a timely one, truly defining the intersection of technology in our daily lives that can really feel like both a blessing and a curse at times, something many of us are still dealing with, in fact, and of course, I'm talking about working remotely. Now, there's a lot we could discuss here, probably enough to fill multiple podcasts, but I'd love to focus mostly on the technology aspect, how that empowers us to do our job and stay connected both with our immediate teams and in some cases, even our coworkers, literal continents apart in Turkey, for instance. But also how it brings an equally important sense of responsibility to set boundaries with it, given how accessible we are at all times of day with technology when it comes to working from home. In that respect, it can certainly be a double-edged sword, as I think we all know. So why don't we start and just talk a little bit about the various tools we all use here at Jotform to stay connected when working from home. What are a few that come to mind for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's amazing that we're doing this, or we're recording this on, what is it, March 12th today, I think. I think it marks just about 1 year ago that we ventured into working remotely.
366 days is March 11.
Yeah.
It was first pandemic.
And that's, first of all, that's mind-blowing that we've made it a full year of working remotely.
You've survived.
Yeah, I feel really disconnected disconnected from the office at this point, which is such a weird thing.
I've only been in the office once to collect my computer, so
right. Yeah,
I never had a connection to begin with.
Yeah. So I always keep forgetting that you're among the wave of hires that we've brought on since we've been fully remote, which maybe goes to the bigger question of, we can make this happen remote. And still find great talent and be productive. But of course, that's all possible with the right technology. So it's like the mind frame going into it is so different than the mind frame we have now a year later. I think when we looked at it as this temporary, like hopefully we're only going to do this for a few weeks. I remember the first stay-at-home order was 3 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, oh, this will be a stopgap. Like let's just find some processes that'll make sense, like, work from home, but don't be a fool about it. And we'll see you in less than a month. But of course that wasn't the case. And we're doing this indefinitely now. I mean, who knows, right? But yeah, I mean, I think we benefited from being a technology company, a productivity technology company. And we kind of already had a mind for using software that makes our lives easier even when we're in the office. And fortunately, a lot of that translates really nicely to working remotely. So, we were already pretty set up on Slack, which is, really everyone knows Slack obviously at this point, but it's a great chat tool. I like it because it also integrates, or Jotform integrates nicely with Slack too, if we want to use it for certain use cases or set up notifications based off of form responses. So that's always kind of been my preference. Our team in Turkey prefers Discord, and kind of for different reasons. I think Discord is great because they like it because you have like a chat function, basically, or like an actual speaking function where all of the designers can like talk to each other, as if they were in the same room at the same time.
Well, it's interesting. Discord started out as like a gaming streaming type app, from what I know. So it's interesting that's been repurposed as sort of an office collaboration tool.
Yeah, I know. It's probably a great pivot for them. I mean, it's I like it, but I think functionally it doesn't work as well for different types of teams. On the marketing team, we have a lot of writers, and we don't have a lot of utility for something that encourages people to like speak to one another. Because if you go into our physical office, it was very quiet. I think we have a very, very quiet office.
Right.
So yeah, they didn't necessarily
parties.
need a way to facilitate speaking, but yeah, I mean, of course, like all the other. No surprises here on great tools, but we use both Asana and Trello, depending on the board, depending on the team. And that's really like invaluable. Like you need a way to be able to track your work and your progress and have some sort of touch point and be able to show what you're doing when people can't watch what you're doing.
Sort of interesting. They serve somewhat similar functions, Asana and Trello, as far as kind of project management platforms and showing collaboration. So it's interesting that we use both kind of for different reasons, but I think we use them for good cause.
Yeah, it's honestly just a preference thing. I couldn't even really speak to which one I like more. I like them both for different reasons, but I think we were started on Trello at first, and I think Trello's been great too because we use that very collaboratively with our team in Turkey. So when we're working asynchronously like that, and they're adding requests into our Trello board, they can add comments, and we can move it along on our end, and it doesn't have to be, we don't have to be in the same meeting at the same time to move work forward basically with Trello, and same thing with Asana, and once again, of course, Jotform. I give a preference to tools that we can integrate with, and both of those cases, a simple work request form, the work requests that get filled through a form automatically populate those boards. So yeah, it's really, really important. Again, it's important when we're in the office, but working remotely, we need that.
Yeah, I think the asynchronous communication is so important as well, because when you're working remotely, you might be online at different times of day, but also just given the fact we have colleagues in Turkey that have an 11-hour time difference, it's great that they can populate your requests or move things along the funnel, and then we wake up and see it. That's the Kanban view, I think they call it. You can see where a project is and its status. And speaking of that, I think Jotform was set up fortuitously in that we have had colleagues in Turkey, and we've had to communicate with them obviously remotely way before the pandemic. So I think we were used to having sort of that system in place, and then it's just a matter of sort of transplanting that to our local marketing team. So for me, coming on in like last June, I mean, I never had to make the transition from working in the Jotform office to working remotely, because I just always started working remotely, which in some cases might even be an advantage in some ways that, it wasn't difficult for me because that's just how I started. That's what I know. But it'll be great to go back into the office in some sort of like maybe hybrid model because San Francisco, In any case, that's sort of an overview of a lot of the tools. Obviously, I'm jumping in here now for the question I asked you, but obviously Zoom and Google Meets, videos. We'll get to the video cadence and how we sort of conduct video meetings in a little bit, but both those technologies, no big surprise there, I think. And how we choose Zoom or Google Meet, I think, is kind of interesting, though. I think Zoom is the most popular one, but in the marketing team, we usually use Google Meets, I think, just because it's so easy. I think I prefer, when I'm actually in the call, I think Zoom is probably the better one. But yeah, because I set up all of our calendar invites, or when I'm creating a calendar invite, just the one click drop down to create a meet. So easy.
Yeah, they make it so easy. Dang you, Google.
I know what they're doing, apparently. I think that's a good segue into sort of our next topic, which is meeting cadence. So basically, how often, especially in a remote culture, like how often do you want to try to schedule meetings versus just settling things via email or Slacking when you're working from home? And I think it's something to take in consideration because we've all heard of, Zoom fatigue, especially since remote first became kind of a thing.
Right.
And in an office, especially a small office like we had, it's different. You just raise your hand, you can swivel around and, touch base with somebody, but you can't do that. So it's a bigger, not inconvenience, but it's a bigger it's a bigger deal to bring something up to someone when it's a remote first culture as opposed to just turning around and talking to them. So how do you sort of establish the cadence of meetings sort of as a manager when you decide to settle something over email versus have, a all hands on deck meeting?
Yeah, if anything, I would say we probably have more meetings as we've been working from home, and we just have to be more deliberate about them, kind of like what you're saying. But we can't just tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, do you have a second to do whatever? It's you create an invite, you create a video link, you add the people who you think need to be added to it, and also just you have to be more conscious of being able to connect with people and like connecting people for the sake of connecting with people, and realize that some people are going a full day without interacting with colleagues other than the periodic like Slack hello or something like that. So I think from a manager's perspective that it's actually probably encouraged me to create more meetings and more touch points, and just to sort of take back what we lost by going fully remote. So if anything, we've set up more meetings probably throughout COVID just for that very reason. We want to be able to communicate and be able to like understand what's going on with everyone on our team, and also just facilitate people, not just me, but like having colleagues be able to connect with one another and finding reasons for them to do so and be more collaborative. Like it's really, really important. So I don't know. We want we ultimately we want to emulate what we were able to do in the office as much as we can. But part of that, obviously the biggest thing that we lost is like that person-to-person contact. So more meetings the better. It's probably a counterintuitive stance on that, but I do think it's probably for the best.
Right. And I think there's, obviously in all things a balance, but I think you touched on the point, like someone like, in your role or even my role, we're pretty often on calls, like communicating with either people on the team or like external like vendors, what have you. But I think there are other people on the team who just in general, they don't get that too much in their day-to-day. Like, a content writer might only have a couple calls a week kind of thing. And for them, they'll start to feel pretty disconnected potentially if they're just not talking to anyone.
Yeah.
So I do think it's for sure a balance, because obviously you can tip it the other way. And, even coming to Jotform, we don't have near as many meetings here as like my last job for 3 months of working remote, where I used to work at an ad agency, and when we went remote, it was almost an overwhelming amount of meetings because there were so many touch points, and it got to the point where you can't get work done because almost half of my day was taken up with meetings. So I think it's a matter of making sure you keep the touch points, but you also make sure, everyone has their space, as with all things, a balance. But I think that there's been, especially at first, a lot of talk about Zoom fatigue. I think that's sort of framing it negatively because it's making it, you have to jump on Zoom, show your face and all that. But I don't think here at Jotform, at least from what I've experienced, our meetings aren't needless. Like everything, usually everyone is contributing positively and voluntarily in every meeting that we have, which I think is an important component of that. Like have the meetings, but make sure they're intentional, which I think we do well.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And going off this too, turning on video or not for calls. We were talking before this, and I think you were somewhat surprised. I was saying, kind of my last job, people didn't turn on their video for calls. And I think this is kind
Slackers.
of an interesting, somewhat controversial topic of, do you actually turn on your camera or do you just sit there with the blank screen? Some companies, I think, care about it. Some companies, I think, maybe don't. Job before this really didn't. I never had my camera on, but then started Jotform and everyone had their camera on. So I'm like, okay, I need to fix my hair today. What have you?
I don't.
Well, you're wearing a beanie. I just need to start rocking the cap at home. But I think it's sort of an important, like almost philosophical mindset of you're going to have camera on interacting that way or not. And I think as with everything, there's two sides of it. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's funny. We don't have an official rule, at least that I'm aware, that you have to have the camera on, but you would be the oddball out if you all of a sudden
it is an unofficial rule when everyone has their camera on.
Yeah, that's tough. It kind of, yeah, you should have your camera on. I feel pretty strongly about that. That kind of like goes back to that, what I was mentioning earlier on the, like trying to recreate the office interaction as best you can. And, if you're in a meeting in an in-person office and you're in a big spacious room, like you're not going to hide under the table and just like listen and not show your face. Like you want to be there. And I think you can pick up so many verbal cues too, just by looking at someone's face, that I think it's pretty important, But if you don't have the camera on and you're on mute, I just assume you're not working. Like you're somewhere else. I hate to assume that, but I do. Partly, not to go off on a tangent, but
please.
I work at home. My wife works at home too, but like she doesn't have to have her camera on, and like sometimes like if she's not the focal point in the meeting, she'll like walk in and like ask me a question or something, and she's like, no, I'm on a meeting. I'm like, you're on a meeting? Like, I wouldn't realize that. I'm like, dude.
Yeah, my sister teaches college at the University of Arkansas, and she's teaching 6 classes this semester, and most of them are entry level, and she says how pretty frequently everyone just logs on, says hi, turns off their camera, mutes, and then she just knows they're gone, because she'll get emails asking about stuff she blatantly covered 2 or 3 times, and she's like, I know you're not there. And it's the kind of thing that's the unfortunate part. It's also a bit of an accountability thing. Like, I think it can be abused if you don't have your camera on it. And it's unfortunate. It sometimes needs to be framed that way. But I also think it goes back a little bit to what I said in my last point, is the meetings have, at least our meetings have intentionality anyway. I can't think of a regular meeting we have where someone just doesn't talk at all. Mm-hmm. And I think it could be argued that if you are in a meeting and you never have to actually engage, you never have to talk, you never have to respond to anything, I would almost argue that maybe could have been handled via email anyway.
Oh,
but I think it's a matter of, again, the framing it and the intentionality of it. Like, as long as you're engaging, I don't think there's a reason for you, to feel like you have to hide. And obviously, it's a comfortability thing. Some people might feel more comfortable with it or not. But I think, we've been in this for a year now, and if you've had to have these in-person meetings, I feel like it's not too much to ask for that. Yeah. So I'm aligned with that.
If you're in a meeting and you didn't say anything, you shouldn't have been in that meeting. And,
right.
That's just,
I think it's as simple as that. And I think that's where like the whole question about Zoom fatigue came in, because I think a lot of companies like overcompensated. And again, my last company, half the calls I didn't need to be on. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, of course I'm going to mute and turn off my camera because I have work to do, or, kind of thing. So I just think as with all the points, it's a balance.
Yeah. It's funny, not work related, but Zoom and camera related. But the same thing kind of popped up, when gyms closed, and I was trying to do some online workout classes, and like a lot of people had their camera off. I just assumed to turn mine on because I'm like, well, but the instructor was so thankful. They were like, oh, because they want to be able to like see what you're doing and see if you're doing the work. And I'm like, are people just like watching people work out?
Well, the whole point is like they're emulating you, right? And you need to be able to gauge their form, I would think, as an instructor.
Yeah.
So if you're just seeing an entire screen of empty blank screens, I feel like that'd be pretty unfulfilling. I mean, you're getting paid either way, but
must be not great.
But also meant probably a greater spotlight was drawn on you, so a lot of people were probably watching you work out too, which must have felt good.
Yeah, I'm sure they loved it.
I'm sure your form was on point. So the next thing I have queued up is setting boundaries, because I also think, this is an important thing to consider in a work from home environment, because technology, as I said in the intro, makes us so accessible. Like, we can always be pinged on Slack. We can always set up to get a notification. We'll always see that email come through. And it's not like a work environment in the office where you can say, okay, I'm out, and you just leave for the day and you leave it behind. You wake up, you're in your office. You go to lunch, you're in your office. Like, you're never not in your office. So I think it's an equally important responsibility to, have the discussion mindset about framing boundaries and what it means to be online during a work day, and how we communicate that. So how would you say we sort of do that as a team?
Yeah. This is an example of do what I say, not as I do, probably. But I think we try to create structure around, once again, like recreating the office dynamic as much as you can, which is you're starting the workday when you announce to the team on Slack that, hey, good morning. Just let your colleagues know that
You're online.
you can be bugged with requests. You can you're there. And then similarly, when you're taking any kind of significant break or you're stepping away for lunch, just letting your colleagues know. And then to close out the day, put an ending on it and tell everyone that you're heading home for the day or you're signing off, and see everyone tomorrow. Like the same three things you would say to everyone when you're walking into an office or you're leaving an office or something like that. Just try to use that as like it's not only a common courtesy, but it also sets a boundary, and it lets everyone know that you're not expected to work into the evening. In fact, it's counterproductive. You don't want to be able to like burn. You don't want to burn yourself out doing that. So yeah, it's important to set that up. I think that it's just a really simple step that any company or manager can take to make sure that they're that they care for their employees' well-being and not trying to burn anyone out.
Yeah, it's framing expectations too, right? Because like you said, it's you come into the office in the morning and you're there and available. You might step out for lunch, then you're there and available again until you leave, and then you're not. So it's like reflecting that of Slack. And I've heard some hate towards Slack, like, oh man, I'm glad I don't have Slack because you're always available, you're always reachable, and like you would be in the office. Like that's the whole point. Like you work from home shouldn't be an excuse to escape not being available.
Right.
Like I'm like, yes, you should be. Like I like that. And the great thing about Slack is that you can actually toggle if you're online or not. It has that little green thing.
Yeah.
And so you can put it to not online or online. And I think it's all just about how the company kind of frames expectations on that. And of course you can, break it up how you want. Like you said, we take lunch breaks, and normally over my lunch break, I go to the gym, I go get in a quick 45 minute workout. And that does a great job of like splitting up my day, helping me feel refreshed, as long as you have that break midday and you can communicate it. And I think just the expectations that, when you're out, you're out, and when you're in, and you kind of hold yourself accountable to that.
Yeah.
And as you said, having a point at which you kind of shut down, log off for the night, and then it's kind of, known you're not going to be reachable, and nor should you be if there's something urgent, a text or something. But once you log off on Slack, it's like you stepped out of the office.
Totally.
I think.
Yeah.
Reflecting the office environment, I think, is key there.
Yeah. I mean, it's otherwise it's really easy to fall into or slip into a trap of, especially if you're at the same computer or you're using the same computer for like leisure and work at the same time, and you're in the same exact space, that it just like the lines kind of blur, and all of a sudden it's 9 p.m. and you're kind of online shopping, but you're kind of like responding to work emails, and then
Slack notification comes through.
A request comes, and I would say that becomes doubly tricky working for a global company like Jotform, where
like 9, 10, 11 p.m. at night, suddenly we start to get all the emails and notifications from our colleagues in Turkey who are just waking up.
Exactly.
Again, to all the things that we sent them.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to double down on that. Maybe, set it so you don't get notifications after you log down and all that sort of stuff. But, as with all work from home things, I think it just falls in self accountability and making sure that you're kind of in charge of this yourself, and you're going to give yourself that time off.
I think one of the it's funny, like this has been talked about a lot and on other articles and everything else, but kind of at the beginning of COVID, it felt a little like a vacation or like a little relaxing. And I remember even like I was like wearing sweatpants more during calls, and then it really one of the things that like really shifted was like treating work like work, wearing, like actually putting on like jeans. Clothes that you would wear. It's jeans. I know.
Such a big deal.
Such a big deal. Yeah, I went like
became a big deal in
months without wearing jeans. So yeah, I think that was a lot of it is just like a mind frame and investing in the right equipment asking the company to invest in the right equipment for your office space, and like clearing your space and then creating a schedule. Yeah, I think yeah, it really helps.
Well,
Definitely
you,
helps.
especially as I think the pandemic started out, you saw like a lot of, guides and advisory articles, like for actually both those points, have a workspace and identify a workspace that you use for work. Like don't work in your bedroom, for instance. I heard that a lot. And yeah, dress up like you're getting ready to go in for the day. Like don't put on a suit and tie, but put on jeans, put on a nicer shirt. Don't just loaf around in your sweats all day. And I think there's a lot of validation behind that, because I think, as you kind of said, it almost started out as, oh, it's vacation, like I can just lounge around in sweats and not have to get out of bed. But I think that's ultimately just, as it becomes a more permanent thing, it becomes more detrimental than anything. So it's all, I think it correlates with those boundaries and getting you in and out of the mind frame.
Of course, I say this as like a chronic underdresser too. So,
well, so you're set. You're not faking anything.
Yeah, no, this is literally for those of you who aren't watching this on YouTube. This is actually how I would normally dress for the office.
True.
I have a hoodie
validate.
and a beanie and a t-shirt and some
sporting the Jotform swag.
Yeah, for sure.
Still,
but this is my dressing up.
Still repping. It works. But I also think it's important that a lot of people, I think, weren't used to sort of what it takes to become disciplined in a work from home environment, because I think for many people it was a really big transition. And I consider myself fortunate, or not. You could phrase it either way. Like I was actually homeschooled growing up, which explains a lot about myself. But I was used to, from the very beginning, like I had to be just disciplined. Everything was on my own timeline, but I had to be able to sit down. I was just ingrained with being able to sit down, set my mind to something, and finish it. It didn't matter where I was, because that's just how I grew up. And then I finished out college remotely when I started working here. So for me, the transition to working
next week, Elliot is starting an MBA program.
Yes,
remotely,
MBA program. So all the skills, all the online
help you
studies. Yes, it'll be busy, but I think it just goes back into the self-dedication, the self-discipline that I think some people through their past have been a little bit more curated to have, and other people who've always been in an office environment, suddenly they're thrown into, well, now you kind of have to set your own rules, your own boundaries, your own guidelines. I think it's a bigger learning curve for some than for others. So I think that's where a lot of the principles of, hey, get dressed, treat it like a regular work day, carve out your space. I think it's especially helpful for those people, as it will continue to be. So I guess the next thing I think that would be good to address is we talked about a little bit as far as our meeting cadence, but when to email versus when to just Slack versus when to actually set up a face-to-face meeting for something. And I remember asking you this, I think my first couple of weeks on the job, like, okay, what's the priority level? At what point do I just chat you? At what point do I provide an email? And at what point do I ask, okay, can we just hop on a call? Like, sort of, what are your thoughts on prioritizing those methods of communication?
Oof, boy. I think Slack, if it's urgent but not necessarily important. I think email lives there forever. I think email is still a great default for communication. You're not going to get the quick response. You're not expecting a quick response, but if you want to mull over something, if you want details, bullet it out, and you want attachments, or if you want, if you want something that's going to live beyond the time you write it, and you want a long thought out conversation that may take several days, well, then email, of course. I think that's just the most sensible thing. Oftentimes we have to default to email too, just being a kind of a global company, but I think it actually kind of creates good email habits. I've become a much better email writer, and it's not like a resume bullet point that's going to stay with me for my whole career or anything like that. But I've become a much better.
Skill.
It is, honestly. I actually put a lot of stock in that. I look for that when I'm hiring people and how they respond or how they follow up after an interview or something like that. But I think being a Jotform has made me a better email writer, and I think that's you think about like the readability, not just the writing of it, but the readability of it. And so I think from an importance standpoint, that the information you want to convey in an email I still think is more significant than what you would necessarily Slack someone.
It's almost more formal.
More formal, yeah. And then, of course, with video, I think is just when you don't have the answers and you want to talk something out. I think brainstorming or like bouncing ideas, which we do in ultimately do in a lot of our videos, or not our videos, a lot of our meetings. But yeah, I think that's kind of necessary for that. And sometimes it's just faster to do a video if you're doing 4 people and you just want to like get a sense of what's going on, or if they have any questions, or just opening that line of communication. Video is really, really good for that, but not always necessary.
Yeah, for sure. I think I kind of echo that. I think the great thing about email is that it's a record, and it's more formalized. Like Slack, we don't have the pro Slack, so everything will disappear in a week regardless. So email is the place for important information, or for more formalized records of conversations you want to be able to keep track of. Slack is more informal, or if something's just going on, you'll probably get a quicker response. And I think everything balanced, because Slack, it's easier to just almost bug someone. You can just hit them up, and
right.
You're kind of trained to give a quick response to Slack as opposed to email. I think the expectation, as you said, isn't going to be they're going to get back right away, and I think that's actually kind of important to, even though Slack is lower priority, to not always Slack them, because I bug you frequently, probably half a dozen times to a dozen times a day on Slack for things, but I don't bug you probably twice as much of that with stuff that I could bug you on. Instead, I just keep a tally so I can talk to you about it next time we hop on a call, kind of thing. So I think it's a matter of balance with all these things, and especially, trying to be cognizant of your attention, because you're, managing 12, 15 people. If I'm bugging you 10 times a day, how many times is someone else bugging you? So I think you have to look through it with a slightly different lens as a manager.
Yeah.
And the double-edged sword is that you need to be responsive, but
yeah, for sure.
Also, you have to be responsive to more people. Sorry.
I think everyone seems to love to Slack me when I'm in a meeting.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there's like an integration for that or something, where if, it syncs with my calendar and they like get some sort of auto response, but then they always pile up when I'm in a call with someone.
Sometimes on Slack, it has a little phone image behind it. And, I just try to set myself a notification to immediately Slack you when I know that you're on a call, because I think that you don't have to worry about it right away. I think you'd appreciate that.
Do you really?
No, I don't. Or I see it on Google Calendar. Chat's on a call. Let's go. No, I try not to, but it'd be kind of funny if that's what people did. I try to spare you when I can, but I often don't. In any case, but yeah, I do feel like that is one of the tougher things as a manager in a work from home environment, is that suddenly you're kind of the go-to guy and everyone's pinging you indirectly, because it's not like if you're in the office and I'm talking to you, it's less likely someone else is going to come up and just interrupt the conversation and start talking at the same time, as opposed to you can get 6 Slacks while you're on a meeting with somebody and no one really knows.
Yeah. I guess the flip side is that still happened when we're in the office too.
Fair enough.
And we still have Slack, so it's not I guess it's not too unusual. It's part of my job.
You can't escape is the key takeaway here. So let's also talk about kind of some lighter things that we do with technology to facilitate, the positive work from home culture, which is, facilitating the team camaraderie, the get-togethers, the virtual happy hours. I think everyone got a little bit fatigued sometimes of everyone jumps on a Zoom call with a beer, but I think there are ways to use technology to spice that up a little bit with what we do for team get-togethers. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I guess I'll first dive into we did a lot of team challenges over the course of the past year, to varying degrees of success. But I think really the reason we were doing that was to build some sort of camaraderie, or, try to like give people, especially in the depths of COVID, to have, some distraction, I guess, or something kind of to build on in a positive way. So we did a reading challenge, where we split into teams and people were able to log the number of pages that they read, and then there was like pitting teams against each other, and then there was a prize for the winning team. And we did the same thing for. We've done 2 different workout challenges where basically, it's the same kind of idea. Or you could do like work from home workouts in your living room, and that kind of builds toward this like team goal. We did an individual one and then a team one as well. But the real reasoning behind that was just to sort of build a sense of community, build a sense of camaraderie, even though everyone's working remotely, and give them that opportunity. And of course, shameless product plug, but Jotform was great for that because everyone has the Jotform mobile app. Or Jotform mobile forms, so they're able to log their workouts, and that's kind of how we like collected everything, and we're able to tell who's ahead. And did the same thing for the reading challenge as well.
Right, and then it goes to a table where it shows everyone's entries, and you can compile and composite.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of fun. I did it sort of selfishly, like I want to read more. Okay, well, let's
self-motivation.
I'm gonna make everyone read more.
It's so easy too, because then you just log in, and it's almost like a validating thing. You finish a workout, you can fill out your form, be like, I did 60 minutes of XYZ, and you get to see it populate that table, and you're closer to that grand prize.
Yeah, exactly. So that was one of the things we try to do, like a monthly game night, or at least a happy hour at a minimum, but usually a game night. And I'm always, I think even a year into this, I'm always surprised that, like, not everyone is having a chance to talk to each other.
Right.
And I have sort of the luxury of bouncing around and having one-on-ones or like group meetings with every single person on the marketing team, but very few people have that. Like we were saying 20 minutes ago, like sometimes people just have one meeting a week, maybe 2 meetings a week, and then then they get this like group interaction. So there's always this like catch up, like, oh my God, how have you been? I haven't seen you since last month. I'm like, oh man, that's the hardest thing about working from home. Is we don't have that. So it is really important to have like a monthly. We do it monthly. Maybe we could do it more, but at least a monthly, fun game night, and just give people the opportunity to connect. We can't do the in-person happy hours or lunches or whatever like we used to be able to. So really, really important stuff. Trivia nights, some Jotform specific things. So we can actually use Jotform for remote trivia, which has been a wonderful use case for Jotform that we never thought about before. We never needed to think about that before.
Conditional logic.
Yeah, exactly. You can use conditional logic and show different answers based off of submissions, and it's definitely a great thing.
Yeah, I will say shout out to Alana, one of our copywriters, for putting it together. But I think it was our Halloween trivia night.
Yeah,
and I remember you said she's preparing sort of the game for us, and I was just blown away by what she was able to do with Jotform. And making this trivia game where it's all this conditional logic. If you pick this, you get this question, this prompt.
Like different haunted experiences.
You can uncover things. Like, it was just fantastically done.
Oh, she knocked it out of the park.
And it was a really cool. It was a genuinely cool. One of the, I think probably the coolest uses of Jotform that I think I've seen is facilitating, like, using the conditional logic to set up these forms and surveys and responses and answers, and then be able to tally all of it on her end, how we responded. I actually thought that was super cool. I think that might be one of my favorite like Jotform use case examples ever. But guys, you should try that if you haven't yet. Set up a trivia night using Jotform.
Yeah, there'll be a blog coming out.
Yeah, we actually should do one on that. Yeah, you are, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. There you go. Good timing.
There you go.
but yeah, I mean, we've also, non-Jotform examples. We've also done like Jackbox TV kind of thing, which is just another example. So you can share a screen and just, have the prompts, and obviously everyone's on their phone.
Exactly. Yeah. Simple investment to get the game. And then, it's great for, an hour and a half of fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think the key takeaway is, use the technology, use the tools at disposal to try to keep that camaraderie going in some way, shape, or form, and keep that, positive culture, positive mindset as we can in today's day and age, until, people are vaccinated and people can start actually going back to the office and doing this in real life.
Well, that's an interesting point. So there was a CNBC article that came out yesterday, and, they project that even at the end of 2021, 40% of people will still be working from home. So I think we have to account for, work just looking different on a permanent level. And
For sure.
I think they've said currently 57% of people are working from home, but that number is still not expected to dip down. And you see these major companies that have already announced to the world that they're, basically doing either fully remote optional or some sort of a hybrid model. So I can't predict what exactly Jotform is going to look like. We might adopt some sort of a hybrid model as well. But even if we're just working from home part of the time, it's good to have best practices in place and be able to do it as, to the best of your ability. So,
yeah, well, it's a large shift. And I think as you said, I think the pandemic was a proof of concept that a lot of companies could work from home. And I think it also shows how valuable it is to have in-person interaction. I think it's interesting that it showed the pluses and minuses of both, really, because suddenly you don't have the in-person culture, but you realize that with technology, sometimes, an editor or a copywriter whose, job is focusing on their projects every day, they might not take quite as much value from coming in every single day as someone like you or I could, where you have multiple touch bases, we have to, collaborate with projects, all this sort of stuff. So I think it shows that, there's different approaches for everything. And a lot of companies are going, as you said, either remote or hybrid or remote first, I've heard, where, you can work remotely or you can come in. And, I think optimally, as you said, it's best of both worlds would be a mix. But I think it has been an important proof of concept that a lot of companies can work remote that maybe they didn't think they could at first.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it all unravels for sure. But otherwise, it's kind of the end of the topic list that I had. Is there anything that we left out?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a great topic. It's, we could certainly go on and on about it.
Yeah, for sure.
But hopefully we'll be in the office at some point, and you'll get to meet some of the rest of your colleagues.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I have not met most of the people on my marketing team, which is interesting, just virtually. But hopefully be able to meet up at some point soon here, have a beer in real life, which will be nice. But until then, we still have our virtual meetups and we have our podcast. Speaking of which, our next episode will be on hiring remotely, which, Chad, I know that you are extremely excited about because you love hiring and especially doing so remotely. So be sure to listen on that one. And thank you for tuning in to Momentum.